Hello children of the web and welcome to Gaming Deconstructed! Today we will be discussing Castlevania, if you could not tell by my cliche vampire voice. For anyone that's lived under a rock, or just didn't care until now for some reason, Castlevania is the classic tale of good versus evil. With the exception of a few games, it's generally the Belmont clan, a line of vampire hunters, versus the dark and powerful Dracula, and the journey through his castle, Castlevania. Disclaimer, there will be spoilers if you care about that sort of thing, and that some of the games have been removed from the official timeline by Igarashi himself.
Castlevania Legend! Circle of the Moon! Legacy of Darkness!
And
Castlevania 64!
like all older franchises, Castlevania's timeline is all over the place. It's a huge mess. Fortunately, we're going to be sorting it all out right now. During this process, keep in mind that I will not be going in order of when the game actually came out, but where it stands in the game's own lore. That being said, Simon, please wait your turn because Castlevania is not the first game on this list. Instead, we must turn to Lament of Innocence. Taking place in 1094 AD, Lament of Innocence marks the beginning point for the eternal struggle between the Belmonts and Dracula. Here we meet Leon Belmont, all-around pretty boy and badass. After his fiancée Sarah is taken by the vampire Walter, Leon gets mildly upset and runs into the forest of eternal darkness, where he meets Ronaldo, who gives him a pretty cool whip. After a fight with Walter, Leon discovers that his stupid hand-me-down whip can't hurt him. In order to advance the plot and add drama, he saves his beloved, but she's turning into a vampire. A terrible, terrible way to try and get out of a relationship if your fiancé is slowly becoming a vampire hunter. She overhears Ronaldo say that she must be sacrificed to give the poopy non-vampire killing whip the ability to be righteous and kill vampires and junk, thus creating the legendary vampire killer we see in so many games. Leon is like, no, I can't do it. But then Sarah makes him do it anyway, and then he kills Walter only to find that Walter was just a pawn and the whole thing was actually orchestrated by Matthias, one of Leon's buddies from college. Matthias calls him names for not joining him in his revenge against God because he lost his fiancée too. Wait, did no one ever go through with getting married back then? Everyone's fiancés. It's kind of weird. So then Leon has to deal with death, like the actual death. And then he kills him. Like I said, he's pretty badass. Matthias runs away and changes his name to Vlad Tepes Dracula, and that's when the Belmonts became the vampire-chasing clan we all know and love. Now that we know the origin story, let's speed this up a bit. 356 years later, Dracula decides that there is no way the Belmonts are still doing their Belmont thing. So he comes out of hiding and gathers a bunch of bosses for someone to kill eventually. Somewhere, Dracula got friendly with a human woman, and they had a son named Alucard. Read it backwards and it says Dracula. Whoa! This actually originates from the 1943 film Son of Dracula. The more you know. Alucard's all about hating dad, so he happens to know one Sonia Belmont, the only female vampire hunter in the Belmont lineage, as far as I can tell, and she takes on Dracula, beating him and, I guess, has a baby. 1476, Dracula's frat buddies revive him early because they miss him so much, which causes Trevor Belmont to go on the prowl. This time, however, Dracula not only wants to cover the world in darkness, but kill the Belmont lineage. Trevor received help from Grant Dynasty, Silva Beldada, and Abakai, who had probably about the 1479, Curse of Darkness. Hector was a devil forge master for Dracula 3 years ago. He got tired of being a sheep, so he ran away. Previous friend and possible player of Barbies as a child, Isaac, kills Hector's girl because of reasons. Hector teams up with Trevor, and together they put a massive-ass Swiffer Sweeper on Romania to pick up all that Dracula trash. Yeah, 1576, the Castlevania adventure! Dracula wakes up after a century and thinks the Belmonts are gone for some reason. Due to obvious reasons, he was wrong, and Christopher Belmont goes to beat up old Dracula. Drac says, well, we know how this goes, and runs away. Christopher Belmont just nods with a smug grin. Probably rides a horse named Prius, too. 1591, Belmont's revenge. Surprise! Dracula's back, and he takes Chris's kid. Chris opens up ye old can of whoop ass on Dracula because he's mad. By the way, Chris names his kid Okay, let's just stop for a moment and just look at this trend. Leon, Sonia, unofficially, Trevor, Chris, 1691, Castlevania. The NES classic Castlevania features Simon Belmont, great-grandson of Chris, because he wants to play a game with a protagonist named I don't even want to say it again. Big surprise, Simon kills Dracula. 7 years later, 1698, Dracula curses Simon to die before he kicked the bucket last time, so now Simon goes around looking for a way to lift the dreadful curse. While it was always a terrible night to have a curse, it didn't stop Simon from gathering Dracula's body pieces, resurrecting him and burning his body, as foretold by some guy at the beginning of the game. 1748, Just Belmont, Simon's grandbaby, runs into Castlevania once Transylvanian youngsters kidnap Maxim, Just's buddy, gets mad jealous because of Juice Mad's skills, and who can blame him? I mean, just look at those Juicy skills. Just look at that. And starts conspiring against him. Juice doesn't give a fuck and deals with it, Belmont style. 1792. Look at that sweet blue tunic and that bandana. Must be a Konami thing. Here he is, the one, the only, Richter Belmont. Dracula studies his adversary very carefully this time and decides that kidnapping is his best option because that's worked so well for him in the past. Richter's girl gets taken, as well as Maria Renard. Maria gets rescued and becomes a vampire hunter too. Together, they high-five each other and beat the blood out of Dracula. 1797. Easily the most beloved in all of the Castlevania games and the game that revolutionized the way that 2D Castlevania games were designed. Symphony of the Night follows Alucard. Using his cool and improved PlayStation capabilities, he fights Richter. Wait, maybe that's just an imposter because, well, I don't know. 5 years really can't change someone that much, can it? Anyways, the real ending has you fighting Dracula after you go through his inverted castle. 1830. Carmilla wants to bring back her boo, Dracula, so she takes the life power of vampire hunter Morris Baldwin, someone who I guess we're supposed to know. I don't know. Hugh Baldwin and Nathan Graves stop this resurrection from happening, but it's not like it really matters since Igarashi put the stamp of disapproval on this game too. 1800 and question mark. Order of Ecclesia. Belmont's missing? Sounds like a great time to introduce a Dracula fighting organization and glyph-wielding hottie, Shanoa. Yay, look at her. Look, she has a big opening on her back, so you can get weird feelings when you play the game. I'll save you a bunch of time on this one since the story's pretty complex. Magic, glyphs, betrayal, Dracula. Boom. 1844. Another retcon game here, and it's not really surprising with its meh story. A not fully powered Dracula threatens the land once more and looks for a host to give him some more power. Cornell, a beast man guy, is tired of Dracula always taking people, so he brings the fight to good old Drac. 1852. For some reason, Nintendo has no idea how to name anything without adding the console somewhere in the title. This Castlevania falls victim to just that. It also falls victim to really bland story delivery. For that reason, I won't even really get into this one that much, other than the fact that Igarashi does not like this game either and has removed it from the official timeline. 1897. I actually think this is really cool, but the Castlevania story lines up really well with the actual Bram Stoker's Dracula. In this tale, Dracula actually invites Jonathan Harker to hang out and play Wii. Pretty cool, right? Especially since it's like 1897. But Jonathan's a really shitty guest, and he brings his friend over, Quincy Morris, to stab Dracula in the chest while he's sleeping off a night of heavy drinking. Quincy's son, albeit not part of the actual story, was hiding nearby when Quincy Morris is killed by gypsies under Dracula's power.
1917. Dracula is sleeping with the fishes.
So that means a new villain, or villainess in this case, must emerge to challenge someone. Elizabeth, Dracula's niece, wants to bring old Uncle Dearest back from the dead, so she starts World War I to harvest souls. Quincy's son, John Morris, along with Eric Lacard, go on a sweet road trip to stop evil. They succeed. Cool story. 1944. Count Bronner, being the clever god that he is, uses the souls of those who have fallen during World War II, much like Carmilla in the previous game, to revive the good old Lord of Darkness once again. Jonathan Morris, not to be confused with his father John Morris, and his friend Charlotte go off to beat him up. Fine, kill him. But before you do that, you have to, kill a few vampiric daughters. No big deal. It's also worth noting that Jonathan is not a Belmont, so he can't actually wield the vampire killer. 1999. Not an actual game, but it is mentioned in the lore of the Castlevania universe. Julius Belmont and his bros and possible hoes finally killed Dracula forever. Hooray! They did. I'm done. They did it. They did it. 2035, the distant future. Soma Cruz, a Japanese youth, goes to this shrine and gets transported to Castlevania, just like that. You know, that's really cool and all, but let's just take a moment to recognize that you probably never will or even have met a Japanese guy with the last name Cruz. I'm just pointing out the obvious here. Graham Jones is the baddie in this game. He wants to take Dracula's power for his own, but Soma happens to meet some friends of his own. Yoko Belnatis, a distant relative of Sypha, and a not-so-subtle Genya Arikado. Genya meaning having horns, and Arikado being a pun on the Japanese pronunciation of Alucard. In typical hero fashion, Soma just trusts all of them instantly without actually questioning why they're just hanging out in front of Dracula's castle, but, suspension of disbelief. 2036, the most recent game in the story, Dawn of Sorrow follows Soma after he leaves Castlevania, a year after to be exact. Celia, a weird blue lesbian, wants to bring back Dracula, but Soma is in possession of Dracula's soul. So, he teams with Julius Belmont, Genya, and Yoko to fight Celia and her candidates for the next great resurrection of Dracula, ultimately taking care of business and stopping the whole thing because no one wants a sad ending. Well, maybe I do. Maybe I want the game to end with the good guys not winning for once. It's been like 21 games and the same shit happens every single time. And if anyone's wondering about Lords of Shadow, it's not part of this storyline, so it doesn't count. But I will say that the twist that Dracula was actually Gabriel Belmont was actually pretty refreshing to me. Even though the gameplay was lackluster and repetitive, I liked the world it was in. It was pretty, there was cool things in it. There! You know what? I said it. The game was pretty, and I liked it. It was different, and it was gothic, and Robert Carlyle did a good job voice acting in it, and there's fucking Patrick Stewart. So get off my back. Everyone loves Patrick Stewart. Shit. Patrick fucking Stewart. Well, folks, there you have it. The Castlevania timeline in its entirety, plus extras. A big shout out goes to CastlevaniaDungeon.net and the various Castlevania wikis out there for providing me with the information. I'd also like to give thanks to all the videos that I used. I have credited you during the video, and it's also going to be in the About section. So thank you so much. Hopefully you enjoyed this onslaught of information, and stay tuned to see what's coming next. Espers, Guardian Forces, and Aeons. Powerful forces that aid the heroes of the Final Fantasy world. But what was the inspiration behind these monsters, and how do they compare with their historical, mythological, or real-life counterparts? Next episode of Gaming Deconstructed, Final Fantasy, Shiva, Ifrits, Bahamut! Oh my.